Me, 35M, with my sister, 42F, siblings for 35 years, got a painful message from her regarding my professional behavior as a substitute K-12 teacher and don't know how to respond. Recently I got a really hurtful message from my oldest sister, and I'm not sure how to take it. I'll start with some background and context, then paste the email. I'm the youngest of 3 children. My 2 older sisters are both stay-at-home mothers. My oldest sister and I have never been particularly close. Since she's had kids, she has seemed to like and respect me less and less. A few times over the years I've heard of something pretty nasty and insulting oldest sister has said about me, behind my back. It got a lot worse a few years ago after our dad died, when she seemed to transfer the issues she had with her dad to me. I always knew I didn't want children of my own, and instead have focused on my academics and career. I have a bachelor's, master's, and a law degree. I do not practice law, but my master's and JD are a combination in a niche field that requires both. I don't want to get too specific because the field is small, but my most recent full-time position included developing and teaching continuing education classes for law school students, attorneys and judges. These classes are more like focused weekend seminars than the kind of term-long, graded classes you get in school. The judges and attorneys need to take a certain number of classes per year to keep their licenses. Anyway, about a year ago a number of external stresses snowballed to the point of my developing severe crippling depression. Along with some other less painful things, several people I loved died within a short time period. I'd recently relocated several thousand miles away from friends and family, and didn't have any real support network. And I stumbled hard. I could barely get out of bed, and regularly spent hours on end just sitting around weeping. I sought medical care and counseling. Was put on meds and started therapy. It helped me regain some basic level of functioning, but I found myself no longer able to perform my job adequately. I wound up moving back home with Mom, hoping the proximity to family and friends would help me heal and regroup. Anyway, my hometown is a small, rural place with no call for my specialty. I wasn't licensed to practice law in that state, and the best work I could come across was being a substitute teacher for a handful of public schools in my region. I thought I was doing a great job TBH. I loved working with the kids at all levels. I went to one of those schools, and I felt like I was giving something back to the community. I knew a few of the other teachers and administration from going to the same school together. I cared, and I think it showed. I would ensure I understood any sub-lesson plans left for me as well as the material, and would teach my ass off. Instead of just pointing out the assigned reading pages and questions, would go over the material in class and go through as much of the assigned questions or writing as time allowed. I'd grade papers if possible. I'd encourage class participation. Of course I was pretty green, and it took me a while to get a feel for handling classroom discipline. I wasn't perfect, but I was trying to be the sort of teacher that I would have wanted, one who got respect by demonstrating respect for the kids. Disruptive classroom behavior is not an issue when you're teaching a room full of attorneys. I got a lot of positive feedback, especially from the students. Towards the end of the school year, the school closest to me, which I preferred, was calling me in essentially on a daily basis. Most frequently I was called in to cover for the special ed classes, which had kids with learning disabilities, behavioral problems, difficult home lives, and more. I add this because of the email content. On one half day I subbed for an old friend of my oldest sister, Jenny, in the email message below. It was an elementary class, and we went through a few basic things. One of the Common Core worksheets had 2 questions that worded so ambiguously that they had multiple correct answers, not just the one that was called correct on the answer sheet. I looked up the definitions of the terms to make sure I wasn't imagining things, informed the class to disregard those questions, and explained how it could be interpreted multiple ways. Typos happen, both in statutes and elementary workbooks, and no big deal. I left a note for the teacher explaining what I'd come across and how I had handled it, in case she wanted to address it further. I didn't hear back from her. A few weeks ago a bunch of family came back into town, and my oldest sister went out and grabbed a beer with Jenny, so a few days later, my oldest sister sent me this email. It's really been fucking with my head since then. I don't know how much of it is accurate, if any. I should mention in the past year I have let my hair grow out from conservative legal business short to shoulder length, and sport a carefully trimmed beard. The email read as:
Sister issue throwaway. I didn't want to tell you about this because it is embarrassing and I knew it would make you feel bad. But, other sister, told me that you were being stubborn and that you needed to hear some of the things that Jenny told me. She said she felt bad telling me this, but that it was the truth. She said, she didn't dislike you, but you've acted really badly. I believe her. Jenny is a kind, loving person and my good friend of 30 years. She doesn't have a mean bone in her body. This is truly how people experience you. This is what was reported to me. The teachers have a derogatory nickname for you. The teachers make fun of you. When you leave them critical notes, they read them out loud to each other and laugh at them. A sub has never, ever left notes like yours to the teaching staff, and they think you have a mental problem for thinking you have to write to do so. You behave unprofessionally. You strut around like a rock star and seem to get an ego rush from being in front of an audience of kids, when it is pretty clear that you don't have a clue as to what you are doing. The day after you've subbed, there are always complaints about you from the kids. The teaching staff feels you do not respect teachers because you are arrogant enough to criticize their work without any qualifications in education yourself and, having never held a professional job in education. They feel you disrespect the kids by showing up looking slovenly with poor hygiene. The area is economically depressed and the kids deserve role models who look and behave professionally. You do neither. When sister issue throwaway subs the following are guaranteed, he will not do his job. The teacher he was subbing for will have twice as much work to do the next day. He messes up the lesson plans and seems to have no idea of how they fit into a larger curriculum plan. Every class in the school has several kids with learning disabilities from dyslexia to auditory processing disorders and more. When he subs, the kids in class who have learning disabilities are often left confused and frustrated because he changes lesson plans, and in doing so removes items in the lesson plan that were placed there specifically for those kids. The teachers have had to reassure these kids the next day that there is nothing wrong with them. It is really frustrating for the teachers to have to do damage control with these kids, all because some arrogant guy thinks he knows better. There will be complaints about how he acted and that his clothes smelled bad. He will leave condescending, insulting notes for the teacher that often betray his lack of knowledge of education, child development, the needs of kids with learning disabilities and school systems in general. When I said Thada told sister that you considered yourself a teacher and felt that you connected with kids, Jenny laughed and said, no one, not the teachers or even the students, consider sister issue throw away a teacher. And believe me, even if he went and got a teaching certificate, no one here wants him at this school. And me saying that has nothing to do with the 2 lesson plans of mine he messed with. Yes, I was totally annoyed that I had to redo the lessons and regrade the work, but I laughed and rolled my eyes when I saw his notes. When I asked Jenny why she didn't let me or mom know this was going on, she said she knew we'd be embarrassed. Which we are, by the way, totally mortified. She also said a lot of people at the school know me, other sister or mom. They knew you had moved back to hometown and wanted to be supportive. Once they saw what a jerk you were, they felt embarrassed for us. So there you have it, sister issue throw away, what was reported to me by someone who works at the school. You are not a teacher. You have actually caused difficulty for some kids, which, I know you did not intend, but you have. Your behavior is completely inappropriate and has alienated people to the point that they make fun of you. Please go try to find a job in your own field of work. I am not sending this to be hurtful. This was reported to me. There is nothing here open to interpretation. This is the way people experience you. I love you and want you to do well. You need to understand that any possible success in life is tied to having positive relationships with other people. Simply being intellectually smart is getting you nowhere. Good social skills, a sense of social awareness and interpersonal relationship skills are so much more important than being smart. Love, sis.
Edit. It's been really helpful to see that it's not crazy for me to have found this message intentionally hurtful more than anything. One thing has come up a few times now, and for some reason an earlier clarifying thread has been deleted. I was asked to grade Jenny's papers if I had the time. I only grade papers in classes when I am asked to by the teacher or on their lesson plan, otherwise I just collect and organize assignments for grading by the regular teacher. I understand that some regular teachers might want to do the checking/grading themselves. Edit 2. A bit more about the problem questions I corrected and my note about it. This was an elementary class. I don't remember the exact wording. But one of the questions went basically like this: circle the sharp object pictured below. It then had pictures of scissors, with rounded tips, a ball, a pillow, and a nail. The key indicated that the nail was the correct answer. One of the kids pointed out that scissors have sharp edges and that kid was 100% correct. After I triple-checked, I told the kids that I'd mark either answer as correct. My note read something like, hey, question number 7 said that the nail was sharp, but as Tasha pointed out, scissors are sharp too. In that their cutting edges are sharp. I double-checked by looking up the definition of the word sharp, and she's right. So FYI, I marked either answer as correct. Wish I could remember the details of the second one, but it's been a few months already, and it seemed so minor that I just can't recall. Update 5 years later. Since that post, I have not been in contact with my sister, except for incidentally at a few family events where we had minimal interaction. My other family is conflicted, but they seem to understand that neither of us wants to be in each other's lives anymore, despite them wanting us both in theirs. I've worked on this issue specifically in therapy, which has helped me develop some insight into those messages. Next year I will be as old as my sister was when she wrote me those abusive messages. There were a few follow-up messages I didn't include in the original post. I don't regret cutting her out. I do regret having had a toxic person for a sibling. Looking back, I recognize that her over-the-top email was part of a few lifelong behavioral patterns. I realize that basically, despite our biological similarities and having been raised in the same household, we are simply not compatible people. I hope one day she will develop her own insight, recognize her abusive behavior patterns, and reach out to, try to repair or re-establish a relationship with me. But I'm not holding my breath for this to happen. And I'm not interested in reaching out to ask her if she'll consider trying to improve things. Not having her in my life in the years since has actually improved the quality of my life. There's been a lot of unnecessary drama and hard feelings that I'd been used to having to handle that I simply don't with her gone. At this point I anticipate only seeing her at a few more funerals. Would have been nice to have a good relationship with a sibling, but I do not have that with her and I don't believe I ever will.